A censorship movement is rising in the world's democracies, whether it's British citizens charged over their social media posts, France's arrest of the owner of the social media platform Telegram, Brazil's shutting down X after Elon Musk refused to comply with censorship restrictions, or Mark Zuckerberg's admission that the Biden White House pressured Facebook and Instagram to censor stories it didn't like.
This anti-free speech movement is the most sophisticated, largest, and global movement we have ever faced.
Legal scholar Jonathan Turley is the author of The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in an Age of Rage.
I think that the problem with free speech is that every generation has to defend it. And this generation has never been more divided because they have been told that free speech is going to hurt them.
A poll this year found nearly 1 in 3 Americans now believe the First Amendment goes too far.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
The freedom to say what the majority doesn't like is the very foundation of a free society. And yet that bedrock freedom is increasingly being tossed aside. An investigation by the Foundation for Freedom Online found documents from Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, that seemed to indicate as recently as last year that the agency worked with platforms to censor speech by labeling people posting so-called misinformation as domestic threat actors. The website was then scrubbed from the internet but was found using the Wayback Machine. A CISA spokesman said the agency has never censored anyone, and that the material was probably removed because it created a misunderstanding. But CISA is a part of Homeland Security, which tried to create a disinformation czar. Documents obtained under the Freedom of Information Act from USAID, a State Department program intended to strengthen democracies overseas, show that the agency encourages other nations to censor social media. In other Western democracies, the censorship situation is even worse. In Great Britain, a nation most Americans used to consider a bastion of democracy, police charge thousands of citizens each year over their social media posts.
Arresting you on suspicion of improper use of the electronic communications network.
What? A British official also threatened to extradite Americans who stir up trouble in the UK through online posts. The European Union no longer has free speech online, according to technology expert Dr. Norman Lewis with the think tank MCC Brussels. Lewis says only speech approved by the EU government is allowed.
What we have operating in Europe is what I call it's a censorship operating system.
Laws like the EU's Digital Services Act force technology companies to remove content Brussels doesn't like.
They want to control the public square. And so, formally speaking, there's free speech. But when you have such vague definitions as hate speech or any of these new, woke ideologies, is all about controlling speech. So you can formally uphold free speech, but in reality, it means that you curb stuff that you don't like.
One EU official threatened Elon Musk over his interview with Donald Trump.
There really is what I call an EU Ministry of Truth. George Orwell would recognize this within a millisecond.
America's First Amendment was written to prevent this kind of censorship. By defending speech the majority finds offensive, insulting, and even verbally abusive. The Supreme Court has said the First Amendment protects the freedom to express the thought that we hate.
Free speech is a natural right. That was how the framers viewed it when they wrote the First Amendment. They believed that free speech was a gift from God, that it belonged to you as a human being. It wasn't granted to you by the government. It's not tolerated by the government. The government has to protect it because it defines you as a human being.
Some say one reason for the recent riots in Britain is that citizens were not allowed to publicly express their frustrations about mass migration without being arrested. Ken Paulson, the former editor-in-chief of USA Today and director of the Free Speech Center at Middle Tennessee State University, says the First Amendment freedom of speech is vital to America's existence.
I believe that we need an environment in which all ideas can be shared, regardless of merit. And unless you're able to speak as you wish, then there is no way we remain rich and strong as a nation.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.